this video, I am going to address what does it mean to go inwards and be with your feelings, and also answering that very popular question of how long does it take to heal attachment wounds. So this is a slightly different video than usual because what I'm going to be doing is sharing a clip from a recent discussion that I had with a fellow attachment coach, Elizabeth Gillette. You may or may not know that I also have a podcast, which is called Lessons in Love. So actually, hello, if you are returning, if you're new here, I'm Carly Ann. And yeah, I'm here each Wednesday, each Sunday, posting a new video. But also I do have my podcast, and it just feels like a really good idea to share with you some of the discussions that are going on over inside Lessons in Love, because there's so much goodness. If you have an anxious and or avoidant attachment style, then this podcast is for you. However, if you're someone who just loves the video more, you're more of a YouTube person, then I'm going to be sharing a bit more from the podcast over here. So like today, I'm going to share a little clip where we talk about these two fascinating, important points. And yeah, and just before I do share that with you, the discussion between myself and Elizabeth Gillette, I would love it if you would like and subscribe, because I know we all ask, but YouTube loves it, and it means that we can reach more people just like you, just like me. And you probably know that healing attachment wounds, doing the inner work on healing the past and becoming more secure, it can be a challenge and it can feel difficult, it can feel lonely. So I would love it if you could help me reach the people that need us. So anyway, here is part of the discussion between myself and Elizabeth. If you do want to listen to the full episode, then you can search Lessons in Love, and it is part of the most recent series.
Right. So when we talk about going inwards, if you can verbalize it, because I always think it's quite important to say it's hard to verbalize these things sometimes. What does it mean to you to go inwards?
Yeah. So when I think about going inward, it's about us observing our own impulses, our own tendencies, our own patterns. So it's growing awareness essentially of what we want to do, what we're driven to do, what is interesting to us, what feels repulsive to us, what feels terribly uncomfortable to us, right? So it's almost like if you're familiar with meditation, it's almost like a meditation on yourself, right? Where you're just sitting there and you're saying, wow, I'm going to notice I have the impulse to text this person. I have the impulse to try to get them to respond to me. I really want to just see what's going on. I need to check in. I'm going to check on social media. I'm going to see, right? So you're just paying attention to, gosh, I'm so uncomfortable with what I'm sitting with right now that I want to do all of these things to get away from it. Right? That's one example, because I think discomfort is something that culturally, we're just not taught to sit with discomfort. We will avoid, I think that's also part of our human nature. We'll avoid discomfort at all costs because it doesn't feel good, right? Like, we also just don't have a whole lot of coping skills to manage our sense of discomfort. So that's a lot of what I'm working on with folks, is being able to say, notice I'm uncomfortable, right? Notice what my impulses are around my discomfort. And then how can I manage the discomfort differently? If my pattern is to run, if my pattern is to focus on someone else or try to fix or change, how can I be with my discomfort in a different way? Because that in and of itself interrupts the pattern, but that turning inward is the first thing, because if we don't know our patterns, how can we do anything differently? Then it's just sort of, we're fumbling around in the dark, right? We have to really have a sense of how we're showing up in order to know how we want to change and how we can move towards security.
It's making me think of, I can't necessarily remember the time. I can just remember the feeling, as we know.
Which is very important,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But it is one of the first times I didn't act. I wasn't reaching out. I was just in the feeling. But what I do want to say is it was in like a sense of despair. There was, yeah, it was like a desperate time still. There's still a lot of crying, a lot of desperation.
Yes.
But I just remember being like, knowing it was going to pass And I remember just knowing, oh, I think the way that I did it the very first time was being like, oh, so this is the feeling. This is the feeling
Mm.
of wanting them to text me back. It was like making that association.
Yes.
And it was, I think it was still bad, but there was something in me as well where it was almost difficult to stay in it at that point.
Mhm.
Um, but the reason I share that is because I don't know about you, but I know that when I give, let's say, an exercise around going inwards or a practice with my clients, I can almost guarantee, depending on how much inner work they've already done, a lot of them come back and say, "Now what? What now? I've done it. I've done it. It's not working."
That's right. Yes. Which I
So
think he was like, it's also just so, it's, first of all, I get that. I get that feeling of like, okay, I did the thing. Like, what now? What do you want me to do with this? Like, why is this mattering? Why is this important? And I think some of that comes from just socially, culturally, our desire to want something to change very quickly because we now devoted some time to it. And so we want the change. It feels, often we come to attachment work. I've seen this for myself and other people. We come to attachment work from that place of desperation. By the time we reach it, we're already feeling so upset and so desperate that we're like, I need this to change now because it feels intolerable. And I think what I've learned over time is that it's actually been a building over time of us feeling uncomfortable. And so we've gotten to this place, we actually can tolerate it a little bit longer. And there are no shortcuts with attachment work, right? So it's a couple of things. It's like trusting that you can be with that discomfort and you can get through it, even if it feels awful, right? Being able to connect with other people around it, because I think that's really important. When we have a sense of support, we can get through a lot more than if we're on our own. And then being able to turn and say, okay, this is what the path looks like. And it feels long, right? It feels arduous. It feels frustrating at times. And if we take the way of really moving through those old patterns and really building in something different, it ultimately changes every single relationship we have from there on out, right? And then we also have the opportunity to talk about like intergenerational patterns and how powerful that is to be able to be the one in your family who changes the dynamics. That's incredible. So it's so worth it, even though it can feel really overwhelming in the beginning.
yeah, absolutely. And do you, when it comes to, I'm just thinking of people listening to this podcast, do you ever have an answer if someone comes to you and says, "How long does it take to heal attachment wounds?"
Oh, it's really
I'm
okay.
hitting
I'm
you with
thinking about
that.
that. Someone said, how long will this take? It will take as long as it takes, right? Like that to me is sort of, I know that's not ideal. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear it's like,
Awesome.
it will take a year, it will take 6 months, it will take, but I think so much of it too is about what's happening in our lives as we're doing that healing work and what sort of support we have. I think there are a lot of things that can be done to make it feel more efficient, more effective, right? We really have to be taking good care of ourselves and we have to be resting, right? We have to be connecting with people that we care about, maybe doing work in the world that feels good to us, right? So there's something about sort of shoring up these other aspects of our lives so that we feel like we're truly in alignment with the goal that we're setting for ourselves, which is to feel more secure and to feel more stable and grounded. And all the ways that we can do that are going to help us get there in the long run.